Welcome to the Widowed Mom Podcast, episode 211, Father's Day, Do's and Don'ts for Widowed Moms.
Welcome to the Widowed Mom Podcast, the only podcast that offers a proven process to help you work through your grief, to grow, evolve, and create a future you can truly look forward to. Here's your host, Master Certified Life Coach, Grief Expert, Widow, and Mom, Krista St-Germain.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Okay, I'm trying something new, and I'm not only recording this on audio, which if you're listening in your normal ways, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, that's all you're hearing, but I'm also recording this on video so that we can add it to YouTube, because apparently that's a thing. So why not? Maybe you actually do want to see my face as I'm talking to you. Maybe that will help you. I don't know. It'll be interesting though, because I am often talking up and looking at the sky. I am often flubbing my words and having to stop. So we'll just see how this YouTube thing goes. And also, before we jump into the topic of today, because I just really want to give you 3 do's and don'ts for how to navigate Father's Day, I want to just again remind you of how human I truly am, because I just listened to the podcast episode that released today and I realized I did it again, where I told you I was 48. I'm only 47. Not that it matters. It really doesn't. I just think it's kind of funny that I can't remember how old I am. So if you, like me, are struggling to remember how old you are, or some days what planet you're on, or whether you put clean underwear on, I am with you. I see you. Who would have thought that someday I would care so little about age that I would not know at any given point in time how old I am? Anyway, okay, let's talk about Father's Day, shall we? Because I think there's a lot of ick leading up to it, and we're just going to keep it super simple. I'm just going to give you what I think are 3 powerful things to do and 3 powerful things to not do. So 3 do's and 3 don'ts to help you navigate Father's Day. Okay, so the first do give yourself permission to do Father's Day in the way that feels right for you. And I realize that this is going to be different for everyone. You'll know in the way that I talk, I'm not prescriptive. I don't ever tell you exactly how to do it. I just give you guidelines, right? So do a Father's Day in a way that feels right to you, and let that vary from year to year. What felt right to you last year, maybe this is not your first Father's Day without your person. What felt right to you last year might not feel right to you this year. That's totally okay. Over time, it can evolve. Let that be all right. My suggestion, as you figure out what feels right to you, is that you involve your kids if you can. Different kids are going to have different approaches, right? Different ways of wanting to do things. And I think it's helpful if you have those conversations in advance. Ask your kids, what do you want to do? What feels good to you? Do we want to do a special outing? Do we want to cook, dad's favorite meal? Do we want to look at pictures? Do we want to go to the cemetery? Do we want to go on an action adventure day that, maybe dad would have loved? Is there a particular hobby that dad liked? Like, what could it be? Do we want to write letters? Do we want to, go camping? Do we want to create a memory jar? Do we want to do nothing at all and pretend like this day never happened? That's okay too. Right? But do it in a way that works for you. People have rules. They think there are right and wrong ways to handle days like Father's Day. I just want to offer to you that is just some crap. You don't have to listen to anybody's rules but your own, right? Create new traditions if you want. Don't do anything if you want. Do it completely your way and let it be different from year to year. Let it grow and change. Okay, so that's number 1. Do it in a way that feels right for you. My second do is do let yourself feel however you feel. However you feel is not wrong. It's never wrong. And remember, feelings are just vibrations in our body caused by thoughts in our mind, right? They're just energy moving through our body. So what makes it so challenging to navigate feelings on days like this is less about the feelings themselves and more about our resistance to the feelings that we're having. Our judgment to the feelings that we're having, how we worry about the feelings that we might have, what we make it mean that we feel that way or at that intensity. The feeling itself is usually the smallest part of the problem. The resistance to the feeling, the judgment of the feeling, the desire to get away from the feeling, the stories in our mind that the feeling shouldn't be there, that there's something wrong with us because we have that particular feeling or that particular feeling to the extent that we are having it. But feelings are never wrong. And again, if this isn't your first Father's Day, you might expect yourself to feel one way and then feel another way. That doesn't make you wrong. Maybe you find that you're feeling even more sadness, even more loneliness, or even less. None of it is wrong. Maybe last Father's Day you weren't angry and this Father's Day you feel angry. Doesn't matter. It's not wrong. You didn't do anything wrong because of how you feel. So my second do is do let yourself feel however you feel. And by that, I don't mean let how you feel dictate how your day goes. I mean consciously give yourself permission to feel however you feel, to let it flow through you, right? Like water through a screen. It's just a vibration. It can flow through. We don't have to resist it. We don't have to shove it down or try to make it go away. We don't need to make ourselves wrong for how we feel. We just need to let it flow through, right? So name it, normalize it, let it flow through. This is sadness. It's just a feeling. It's part of being human. It's okay. Can't hurt me. That's what I'm talking about. My third do is do remind yourself that the buildup is usually worse than the actual day itself. This goes for death anniversaries. This goes for holidays. This goes for any significant event out there in the future that we know we might have a lot of intense emotion around. Almost always, and I have coached hundreds of widows that will validate this for me, it is almost always the anticipation that is worse than what we actually experience on the day of. So, if you can remind yourself of that, if you can remind yourself that I like to think of emotions like waves in the ocean sometimes, like I'm not going to try to change the ocean's waves. That doesn't even make sense. I know that would be a futile effort on my part. But if I am in the ocean and there are waves, and I relax and let myself float and let the waves do what they do, and I don't resist them and I don't try to get away from them and I don't tell myself that something is wrong because they are there, then the waves get easier. And I want you to start doing this now. And I realize this episode is dropping only, a week before Father's Day, but I want you to start doing this now. Your job is not to change how you feel. Your job is not to be happy. Your job is not to be blessed or look for the positive side, right? Your job is just to allow yourself to feel how you feel and remind yourself that the more you can do that now, the easier the buildup is. And that's usually the worst part. All right. So those are my do's. So do Father's Day in a way that feels right to you. I suggest you involve your kids. Let those traditions change over time. Don't worry about what other people think. Do what is right for you. And something, that's right for one child may not be what the other child needs. So it can be okay if everybody wants to do it a little bit differently. Do let yourself feel however you feel because you are never wrong for feeling that way. And do remind yourself that the buildup is usually so much worse than the day. And if we can just relax, knowing the worst thing that can happen is an emotion and we can let those emotions flow through, it gets so much easier from now until then and on the actual day itself. So those are my do's. Here are my don'ts. Your brain is going to want to compare. Don't make that mean anything. Your brain is going to want to compare what's going on for you compared to your neighbor. What's going on for you compared to your best friend. What's going on for you compared to other widows that you might know. What's going on for you compared to how it was last year. Your brain is going to want to compare. Brains love comparison. That's how we find meaning, right? We've got to have context, so brains are always comparing. This is not a problem. Sometimes you will hear people give advice like, don't compare. I think that's ridiculous in a way, because there's nothing you can do about it. Your brain is just going to compare because that's what brains do. So my recommendation is don't make your brain's comparisons mean anything they don't need to mean. Because if you start telling yourself when your brain does what it naturally does, which is to compare, that you're doing it wrong, if you start telling yourself that you shouldn't be comparing, if you start telling yourself that it should be the same for you as it is for that other person, or you're doing it wrong, or there's something wrong with you, or, your life is terrible and her life is amazing. If you start telling yourself that it should be the same as it was last year or whatever, right? If you notice your brain comparing and you start to make that comparison mean something, it's easy to get sucked into the story that comparison is a problem and that we shouldn't be comparing. And I just want to offer that you can watch your brain compare and totally name and normalize that for yourself. Yep, this is the part where my brain compares my experience to what I think it should be. This is totally just the part where my brain compares my experience to what it was like last year. This is the part where my brain compares, how I'm doing compared to how I think that other widow is doing. So your brain will want to compare, and the experience of watching it do what it will do gets easier if you stop telling yourself it means something when it doesn't. So that's my number one don't. Don't make it mean anything when your brain compares. Number 2, don't feel guilty for how you feel. If you experience happiness, if you experience joy, if you have an emotion that we might classify as quote unquote positive, again, you have done nothing wrong. Don't guilt yourself for how you feel. It doesn't actually help. It's okay to have moments of laughter. It's okay. It's okay to have a lot of laughter, not just moments. Laughter is amazing. It's okay to feel good. I've done entire podcast episodes on why it can feel so hard to feel good. But a huge reason that it feels hard to feel good is because we make ourselves feel bad about it. We make it mean something. We make it mean that I didn't love them enough, or I'm moving on, or I'm forgetting them, or I wasn't a good enough spouse. Like, we have all of these stories that pop up in our mind when we feel joyful or happy, or when we laugh. And we don't need to believe any of those stories either. So please don't make yourself feel guilty when you feel good. And my number 3 don't be afraid to seek support. You are your most important asset. And I mean this. You are your most important asset. You are the most important asset to your children, and you are the most important asset to yourself. Your well-being is paramount. It matters. And you may have never been taught to prioritize your own wellness. And I don't mean to prioritize your survival. I mean to prioritize wellness, goodness, quality of life. You may never have been taught to do that. I think actually most women are taught not to. We're taught that we are the lowest on the priority list and everyone else comes first. So it is not a sign of weakness when you seek support. I see that as a sign of strength. I see that as priorities where they should be, right? Which is you knowing that you are your most important asset and treating yourself accordingly. And sometimes that means support outside of ourselves. That could be a variety of things, right? That could be, an online group. That could be an appointment with your therapist. That could be a life coach like me, right? That could be coming to Mom Goes On and joining us there, which, by the way, I highly recommend, obviously, right? That could mean a walk, right? That could mean time alone. That could mean any number of things. It could mean there's so many amazing little therapy apps out there these days that you can use. Maybe there's, you find it tremendously helpful to read about other people's grief experiences in books and things like that. Don't be afraid. Don't make it mean you're weak or regressing or something. If you seek support, treat yourself like the most important asset because you are. And that means that your joy, your mental wellness, your quality of life matters. It really does. So, in summary, Father's Day. And we could make a much longer list, but these are the 3 that I want you to keep in mind. Do it your way. Do it in the way that feels right for you. Let yourself feel how you feel because you're never wrong. Feelings are never wrong. And remind yourself that usually the buildup is way worse than the actual day. Notice when your brain wants to compare and don't make it mean anything. If you feel joy or happiness or you notice that you laugh, don't feel guilty about it. You've done nothing wrong. And you are your most important asset. So don't be afraid to seek support in whatever way feels helpful and right to you. Okay? Okay. That's what I have for you this week. I love you, and you've got this. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and want to create a future you can truly get excited about even after the loss of your spouse, I invite you to join my Mom Goes On coaching program. It's small group coaching just for widowed moms like you, where I'll help you figure out what's holding you back and give you the tools and support you need so you can move forward with confidence. Please don't settle for a new normal that's less than what you deserve. Go to coachingwithkrista.com and click Work With Me for details and next steps. I can't wait to meet you.